Welcome everybody, it's Spessy, and we're looking at 5 brand new cards from Azurite Sea, and some of them are absolutely bonkers good. The new set is about a month away, so we're starting to get to that point where we're going to be getting a little bit more excited for it. And I think with some of these cards especially, we're going to really be starting to brew and think what decks might be possible next set. Big shout out to Card Market, who sponsor the channel. It's the best place to buy your singles online in Europe. Tinkerbell, Queen of the Azurite Fairies, has Fairy Synergy. The shining example ability is whenever this character quests, your other fairy characters get +1 lore this turn. So some cards might read your fairy characters get +1. That would include Tinkerbell herself, which would mean she would quest for 3, but it doesn't. It says your other fairy characters. So it is only questing for 2. And of course, immediately begs the question, what other fairies are there in the game? Pause the video and see if you can name them all. I bet you can't. So we've got the other Tinkerbell cards, which there's quite a few. Of course, we've got the Steel Giant Tink. We've got the 3-cost Tiny Tactician. There's also the Tinkerbells in Amber and Emerald, respectively. But then you've also got things like Blue Fairy. You've got Fairy Godmother in Amethyst. There's a few Fairy Godmother cards. And finally, we've also got Merryweather and Flora and those other fairies from Emerald in set 5. So truth be told, none of them are very good. And therefore, this card I just don't think is going to see any competitive play. But, of course, we are getting more fairies. The more fairies we get, the better this one gets. But even if there was a bunch of amazing fairies, I'm still not that convinced I would be that interested in this card, truth be told. What I will say is maybe the best bet for this card is going to be an Amber and Amethyst deck, because the Amber Tinkerbell is a 4-cost uninkable with a 1/4 stat line, which when you play this character, you look at the top 3 cards and you can add a character to your hand. So that card would be a good shift target. You play that on 4, which replaces itself, and then you shift in this Tink. 5/6 evasive, nothing to smirk at. It is of course inkable as well, but it only quests for 2, and moreover, its ability just isn't that good. So unfortunately, I don't expect this one to see any play anytime soon, but it's definitely a fun one, no doubt about it, and allows you to build an all-out fairy deck at some point in the future. But I don't think that's going to be happening in Azurite Sea, at least at a competitive level. But if you want to build a fairy deck, now might be your chance. We also have a new fairy ship location. Legends say that whenever something goes missing, it's been taken to build the fairy ships of the Azurite Sea. So it's a 1-cost inkable location with 4 willpower, which gains 1 lore. Is this one going to see any play? Almost certainly not. Having said that, what I will say is this is the best 1-cost location that you now have in Amethyst, which might seem like, okay, who cares? But Amethyst does have a lot of good locations already. You look at Queen's Castle, as well as the Library, 2 of the best in the game, if not the standout 2, and therefore some kind of John Silver deck, which wants lots of locations, could be possible. At the moment, there's Casa Madrigal, which has 6 willpower. It costs 1 to move there, and if you have a character there at the start of the turn, you gain a lore. I think I would rather just have the fairy ship, so 2 willpower less, but much less conditional. So I do think Fairy Ship is the best 1-cost location in Amethyst, which means I don't think we can completely write it off. I do think that like all-out location decks, the more locations we get, the better and more appealing those might become. John Silver in Steel, the 3-cost, which gains lore and resist for every location, is a real powerful card in the right deck. And therefore, I am interested in checking this card out in that particular deck. But I don't expect it to be very good otherwise. Now, this is the last kind of bad card, and then we're getting onto the real spicy things. This is Gadget, the Heck Ranch. It's just a vanilla card. It's Simba without the bodyguard, which is not good at all. It does have the inventor tag, could be a shift target as well. All clues pointed to an island. I think the flavor text might be the interest on this one. All the clues pointed to an island, but I never thought I'd see it on a map. Golly, this is incredible. I mean, the island actually exists. So it's technically credible, but still, this is amazing. So it seems like our adventurers have found some kind of secret island, and that's going to be quite key to understanding the story of Disney Lorcana. Only 3 cards left to go, but they are the 3 most exciting ones. Now, you might say, this doesn't look that exciting, but this one's pretty exciting, I think. Jasmine the Royal Seafarer. The next card we're going to be looking at is a Shift Jasmine card, which has an outstanding ability. So bear that in mind, that when we are looking at this card, there's an insane legendary card which can shift onto this. So we've got a 3-cost inkable Jasmine in Emerald with a 2/3 stat line. So 1 strength less than a vanilla stat line card, something like Mickey Mouse. But therefore, if you're getting a lot of ability, it could be good. Also, a vanilla card that costs 3 would be questing for 2. So this is only questing for 1 and it has 1 less strength. So in other words, in order for this card to be good, it needs to have a strong ability. And the ability is by order of the princess. When you play this character, choose 1. You can exert chosen damage character, or chosen opposing character gains reckless during their next turn. Honestly, pretty good. I actually like this card quite a bit. There is already a hyena card in Emerald which can exert chosen damage character. It's a 2 cost in set 5, but it's just such a situational ability. It's difficult to justify putting in your deck. But that's what's nice about Jasmine, is being able to exert a chosen damage character could be incredibly powerful, particularly if you were to play an Amethyst, right? You can bounce this back multiple times. And then if you don't want to do that, we know how powerful Reckless can be. Giving a Merfolk Reckless can be absolutely outstanding. Lyle's been seeing a lot of play. We did even see back in set 3, I believe it was, a deck with Jacques, which is a 1/4 3 cost which give Reckless. But I believe Quest for 2 see some competitive play and do well at a Disney Lorcana challenge. So Jasmine's interesting. I have to say, on the surface, it looks underwhelming in every area, but you have to recognize that you're paying for flexibility here. And the next card we look at is an incredible shift target. Like, this becomes an incredible shift target. The best cards to shift on are cards which have a powerful ability when you play them and then aren't doing that much once they're on the board. So this is going to be an incredible shift target. Of course, you've also got Morph in Emerald. There's also some Jasmines in Sapphire as well. So the next card we look at might be maybe a Sapphire and Emerald card. But overall, I think this card's actually pretty damn good. I think it has potential, but it is also quite weak in the same way, right? Like, you're not going to want to play this in an aggro deck, but some kind of more control, slower deck, which I think Amethyst Emerald probably comes to mind. You could bounce this back multiple times. Similar to Lyle, can sing Friends. It's just an inkable version of Lyle in a lot of ways, with that potential upside of being able to exert chosen damage characters, which is incredibly powerful in the right situation. So I think this is definitely one that will see competitive play. Especially when you look at this card, which is written in German, but don't worry, I've got the translation for you. This is a 6 cost inkable Jasmine legendary card. Matthew Robert Davies, the artist here, big shout out to Matthew, who signed a few of my Ursula Deceiver of all cards. Also the artist behind the Elsa from Elsa Enchanted from set 1. So this card is a 5/5 which quests for 2. It has shift 5, and the ability is, if you shift this character, so only if you shift, all exerted characters bounce back to their player's hand. So that includes your own. So if you have an exerted Prince John, when you shift this, your Prince John goes back into your hand. Obviously, you're going to be in control of whether you want to do that or not. So I would say that the fact that it's going to return your own characters to hand is a pure upside, because if you want them back in your hand, let's say you want to bounce a goat back into your hand in Emerald Amethyst, right? You could quest with your goat first and then bounce it back when you shift Jasmine. And if you don't want the goat back in your hand, then you could just shift Jasmine and then quest with the goat afterwards. So the fact it returns your own characters is just almost a pure upside. I think the only exception to that is if one of your characters has been exerted and remains exerted at the start of your turn, if your opponent plays Elsa, for example. But I think 99.9 times out of 100, that fact it can return your own characters is just pure upside, and definitely looks interesting with Amethyst. But yeah, all exerted characters bounce back to their players' hands. That is so powerful. If your opponents started questing, they quest of everything, they think, oh, I'm going to win, and then bam, you shift in Jasmine, and everything goes back to the hand. And then obviously, if you've got things like Sudden Chills in hand, you could sing some Sudden Chills, start discarding those cards you've just bounced back into their hand as well. You could also, if you've maybe got Clarabelle down on the board, there's definitely a lot of Clarabelle synergy there, bouncing things back to your opponent's hand. Milo Thatch, interestingly, has a similar ability. When Milo Thatch is banished, you return all opposing characters to that player's hand. The problem with Milo is it's uninkable, which makes it quite difficult. This is inkable. Having said that, if you don't shift it, it's incredibly lackluster. So it is going to be a card which you want lots of shift options. And I think that's, again, where this Jasmine Royal Seafarer is going to really feel like a great card. If you're playing this Jasmine, you're also going to be playing this one, because it's so powerful when you can shift it. I mean, what's also interesting is if you're at 8 ink, you could play this Jasmine, exert chosen damage character, and then shift this one. I suppose the question is, The question is on that, however, is would this one also bounce back to your hand? And I'll let you know in the comments if that's the case, as I'll double check the exact translation. So if you were to shift this exert, no, but you could just play for 3 and then play this for 5. So if you have 8 ink, you could in fact play Jasmine, exert a chosen damage character, and then shift Jasmine and bounce that back. The question I have is, if I was to quest of this Jasmine first and then shift this, would this Jasmine then bounce itself back? But that doesn't really make any sense to do, right? Because you've got 2 lore on this. I suppose the situation that might be prevalent is if you have Jasmine and Friends on the other side in hand, you sing Friends, which then draws you into this Jasmine. If you were to shift it, would this bounce back into your hand? I'll let you know in the comments. Overall, I do think this card is a little bit clunky. However, even without its ability, I mean, look, its ability is absolutely bonkers, but the stats are still pretty good elsewhere. So if you do achieve this ability, not only do you have an incredibly powerful ability, but you also have a card with very reasonable stats. 5/5 is significant because Maui is going to be traded out. If Maui tries to challenge Jasmine, Maui gets removed. Clarabelle has a similar stat line of a 5/6, and she feels just like such a menace to deal with. That feels so good that your opponent is forced to rush in with Maui and it gets removed just to deal with this card. That is really, really spectacular. So I think this one's incredible. Morph, Jasmine builds. There are some other Jasmine cards out there. I think in particular, there are some Sapphire ones, but we'll wait to see if there's any more Jasmine cards which are printed. And again, I think if you're able to get some synergy bouncing some of your own cards back to hand, such as Amethyst, this one in particular could be really, really good. But I think also definitely some Sapphire Emerald potential. This is an incredibly exciting card. Really, really looking forward to building some decks with it. But if you thought this card was exciting, I think the last card we're looking at is even more exciting. But I do have to get a move on because I have a plane to catch. We've got a new rare location in Sapphire. It's a 2-cost inkable location with 8 willpower, and it costs 1 to move there. No lore gained, but really, really good stats. 8 willpower on turn 2 is pretty incredible. If you were to have a location that gained 1 lore on turn 2, you would probably expect it to have about 6 willpower and a mediocre ability. So this has 8 willpower, no lore, but its ability is absolutely incredible, which I think is why this card is really, really powerful. The planning session ability, which is at the start of your turn, if you have a character here, you may put the top card of your deck into your inkwell face down and exerted. So it's a location engine which can ramp up each turn. Absolutely incredible. Now, a lot of you are going to lose your minds quite quickly here and be like, oh my goodness, can play this on turn 2 and it starts ramping straight away. Well, that's actually not the case. In fact, the Rescue Ranger Submarine is most likely a card you want to play on turn 3, because if you were to play it on turn 2, you're going to have 2 ink to play it, but then you're not going to have any ink left over to move something into the submarine. It's quite a cool location, having a submarine as a location. I like that. More likely you want to play this on turn 3, perhaps after a T-Po as well. Let's say you go T-Po, let's say you go Porpoise on 1, T-Po on turn 2. That would then allow you on turn 3 to pay 2 for the Rescue Ranger Submarine, pay 1 for some sort of character, and then pay 1 extra to move that character in there. Alternatively, you could of course play a character on turn 1, and then on turn 3 play the Rescue Ranger, or turn 2 play a character. Turn 3 play the Rescue Ranger Submarine, and then move one of your 2 characters into the submarine. So it's a turn 3 card, not really a turn 2 card. And I think that also does clash a bit, of course, with things like the Fishbone Quill, which want to ramp. But let's be honest, 8 willpower on turn 2, even on turn 3, really going to be difficult to stop. I think your opponent's going to be more likely to try and remove the character inside the location. What's worth mentioning is if you have 2 characters at the Rescue Ranger Submarine, you don't get to ink 2 cards. But that's going to make it much more difficult to shut down the ability. And it only costs 1 to move in there. So I think there's going to be a lot of situations where you have the Rescue Ranger Submarine down on the board, you have an ink left over, and you just use that to move another character in there to just give you some extra protection. I think this one's really good. Interestingly, there is, I think, some pretty good Sapphire cards already that synergize with locations. In particular, Parcher is a card which really interests me. It's a set 5 card, 0/4, which quests for 2. It costs 3. And at the start of your turn, if you have an item in play, you gain 1 lore, and if you have a location in play, gain 1 lore. So you can gain 2 lore at the start of your turn if you have a Porpsicle and this down on the board, and then it can quest for 2. So here gain you 4 lore, a Parcher plus this, and a Porpsicle, 4 lore in a single turn, and ramp you as well. Sounds like a pretty devastatingly powerful combo. So I think this one is absolutely going to see a lot of play. I think it's the kind of location that I really love the look of, because you're rewarded for actually having characters there. And I'm really excited for this one. I think it's a really, really interesting card. Interestingly, there's Motunui already, which is a 2-cost ramp location in Sapphire. And I actually think that card's a bit underrated, but I think it has significantly less willpower, but it does gain you passive lore. And interestingly, with such a powerful ability, I think you're happy to sacrifice the fact that this card does not gain any passive lore to have that extra willpower to make it really beefy and difficult to deal with. For your opponent to shut this down in the early game, they're going to have to lose out on 3 or 4 lore by not questing. And the fact that you can get it down so early means it's safe from Maui. Something like a Fox, something like Crabs, of course, are going to be good at dealing with this, but I think this card's absolutely tremendous. So overall, I like a lot of the new cards. Tinkerbell, more like Tinker Smells. I don't think this one's very good. The Fairy Ship, also unspectacular, but maybe one could find a niche home. I think the Gadget Hack Wrench is not doing anything, but has some cool flavor text. The Jasmine, I actually like a lot, and I like the Shift a lot as well. And this one, I think, is the pick of the bunch. Honestly, if I had to say the best card of these, weirdly, I would say this one, which seems a bit weird, but like this card is so good, but it relies on having a good shift target. And I think this shift target is actually just one of the best shift targets in the game by how flexible it is. In Emerald Steel, it can sing Storm Rage on. Moreover, I think I really see a home for this in Amethyst Emerald, where you can use the second ability to give your opponent Reckless when going second to let you claw your way back into the game, and then a couple turns later shift this in. I think Morph's a great card as well, with some interesting shift options like Pegasus, Clarabelle. So I like these cards the most, but I think this one's absolutely tremendous too. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Give it a like if you did. I need to rush off to the airport, so without any further ado, goodbye. Thanks again to Card Market, who sponsored the video. See you guys soon.